My longtime fans will remember this, but in my first video I mentioned that Ticket to Ride was a great game for newer gamers who don't know much about worker placement, economic engines, prestige points, or little wooden cubes. If you're not familiar with my first video, then by all means, go watch it right now. I'll wait. No, you idiot, I told you to drop it in the vat of acid. Acid! Oh, you're back. Well, that was quicker than I expected. Hey, I gotta go. Don't screw this up. Today's video is going to cover just the type of game you don't want to use to introduce your friends into the magical world of board gaming. For the rest of us, though, it's nerd heaven. We're not in Carcassonne anymore, kids.
Oh, get your towels ready, it's about to go down. Everybody in the place hit the open deck, but stay on your mother toes. We running this, let's go. I'm on a boat, everybody look at me 'cause I'm sailing.
Le Havre is a game about making money by selling goods. Some of those goods are used to feed yourself and your family, though, so it's a delicate balancing act. On a player's turn, they'll move one space down the harbor line, placing the items listed on the supply tile in the appropriate offer space. The player can then spend their one action either taking all the goods from one of the offer spaces, or using their person-man here to enter a building in order to take that building's action. Neutral buildings can be bought as a free action during a player's turn, and player-owned buildings can be sold by their owner at any point during the game. It seems simple, but the complexity of the game lies in how the buildings and goods interact. I'm not going to cover each available building here because I think YouTube has a video limit of like 10 minutes, and explaining all the buildings would seriously take 195 hours. Instead, I'll go over a few turns so that you can get an idea of how the game plays. It's Blue's turn, and he adds one fish and one clay to the offer spaces as shown on the supply tile. Blue then decides to enter the building firm to be able to build a building. He places his person-man on the building firm card and spends the required resources to build the fishery, since it's one of the 3 buildings available for construction. Red moves her boat to the next open supply tile and decides that it'd be nice to own that clay mound that's available. Since it can't be built, it needs to be purchased, so she pays the cost listed on the building card. Since buying buildings is a free action, Red is still able to take her action for the turn. She decides to take all the fish from the offer space and ends her turn. Purple moves to the next space, places the goods in their spots, and decides to visit Blue's fishery. If the building had a usage cost, he would pay Blue the required amount to use that building, but it doesn't, so he doesn't. Purple takes the listed amount of fish from the general supply and ends his turn. The game continues like this until the player on the last harbor tile finishes their turn. This signifies the end of a round. At that point, there may be a harvest. All players will also need to come up with enough food to feed their families at the end of every round. In all transactions throughout the game, money can be used in place of food, but not the other way around. Going broke means you'll need to take out a loan, which costs you interest every round until you pay it back. You want to pay back your loans because they're a big penalty during scoring. After the harvest and the feeding, the current round card is flipped over to reveal a ship. Ships can either be built at a wharf or purchased just like a building. They provide extra food at the end of a round and can help you ship goods for money once the shipping lane is built. Also, the town will occasionally build one of the available buildings, making it available for the players to use. Any required usage costs get paid back into the supply. The game ends after a set number of rounds, which changes based on the number of players. Final point totals are determined by adding cash on hand with the value of your ships and buildings, minus any leftover loans. Whoever has the most points wins. If you like games involving exchanging goods for other goods that you can then pack up and ship out for victory points, then this is the game for you. It's by the same guy who did Agricola, so it's got a good pedigree behind it. There's always a bunch of interesting choices available to you, and the buildings are randomized at the start of every game. Having longer and shorter versions of the game is nice too. However, there's not a whole lot to do when it's not your turn. In fact, despite having only one action on your turn, the game can come to a screeching halt if you have anyone prone to AP in your group. There's also a lot of pieces. A lot. The game comes with little plastic bags though, and other people have found some other creative ways to contain the 17 trees worth of cardboard. Even with brisk turns though, this game can take a while. It's going to be the main course of your games night to be sure. This might not be a bad thing, but it's something to consider. It can also be pretty intimidating to people who aren't really used to meatier games. That's not to say it isn't teachable, but it's definitely not something you'll want to break out at your next Super Bowl party. It's also a bit on the pricey side, but hey, it's cheaper than cocaine. If you're in the market for some heavy gaming, then this is the place to be. It's not as complex as something like Democker or Android, but it's definitely a great way to see what lies beyond the valley of Ticket to Ride and Settlers of Boring. I own both this and Agricola, and some people feel that there's not enough difference between the two to warrant owning both. That's an understandable opinion, but personally, I feel like Le Havre distinguishes itself by being a nice combination of Agricola and Caylus. If you don't own Agricola and have been on the fence about picking this one up, then you can't go wrong with this game. If you do own Agricola, talk to your doctor and see if Le Havre is right for you.